So, and the funniest part is, when you're a kid, you can't wait to grow up. Now I trade all my adulthood for a Capri Sun and a nap after recess.
People don't have hope for the future is because it seems like we are trying to destroy ourselves as a species from the inside out.
Life has gotten so expensive that it's not even worth trying to be frugal anymore. There's no point.
The older I get, the more I realize that everyone is just like in massive debt and they don't seem to care about it.
I got laid off from my corporate job yesterday. And I think that this is the reality for a lot of Americans right now. I was like, 37 years until I retire. I could do this. I don't have a savings account. I'm not retiring.
Maxwell House, the coffee company, has announced that they are rebranding to a new name, Maxwell Apartment.
Society will be really fractured and a lot of people will be heavily depressed. A lot of tech companies are going to leverage this for profit.
I've done nothing illegal. I have my rights, and I intend to keep on biggering and turning more tripulatries into needs, and nothing is going to stop me.
I love that so much. Thank you, world.
By now, it's pretty much old news that Gen Z's future is bleak, to say the least. Yet conversations keep circulating about how they're ever going to navigate it, and that's because they're in a really unique situation. Sure, every generation had anxieties in their youth about their future, but none of them have gone so far as to collectively completely lose hope in all that is good. And that makes sense, right? Like, since the pandemic, their path into adulthood has been plagued, pun intended, by a cost of living crisis, a housing crisis, a job crisis, and as a cherry on top, fears of a global war. But the question I want to ask today is whether the world Gen Z is experiencing right now really reflects the future they're heading toward, or if we've just overburdened them with worst case fears of the future. And the reason I say that is because if we know anything about Gen Z, it's that they're not going to just sit back quietly and let the world burn around them. Just look at how they were the first generation to really push back against toxic workplaces and refuse to be underpaid and overworked, or how they unapologetically redefine traditional life milestones that had a chokehold on humanity for centuries. So that is what we're going to get into, the storms Gen Z faces ahead, and whether their resilience will be enough to carry them through. Now, before we get into it, I want to say that this is not an exhaustive list of all of Gen Z's problems, but just some of the major ones. With that, this isn't a pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of propaganda, but rather a dissection of what options there are given this depressing situation.
When adults used to say, you're gonna see one day, I'm seeing. I see it now. Okay, I get it. I see the bills, I see the back pain, I see why my parents used to just sit in silence after work staring at the wall. I get it. Okay, I used to think adults were being dramatic, like how hard could life be? Turns out very, very hard. Every day's a new episode of why is this my problem? You start saying stuff like, these weeks are flying by, and that's how you know your soul has clocked in permanently.
So to start off strong, we need to talk about Gen Z's debt problem, because it is a big one. A recent poll showed that Gen Z's average personal debt was already at $94,000, far above millennials and Gen X, which is also adjusted for inflation. So how did that happen? Well, at this point, most of us are familiar with the players in the game that quietly siphon money out of our wallets. Companies like Klarna and Afterpay have perfected this model, on top of everything in our lives slowly converting into subscription models.
We're in a Toyota 2025, and we noticed that on the screen, you can't use navigation unless you pay a subscription fee for it, right? Which is insane. Like, you can't just hook your phone up and use navigation on your phone. That's free. So we looked at the subscription fees, and it's $15 a month. It's also $15 a month to stream music to the actual screen in your car.
And then, just as Gen Z was entering adulthood, they were faced with this dumpster fire of an economy, meaning that unless you're making an above average salary or are partnered up with someone who's also making an average income, there's a good chance you're struggling to pay for rent and groceries. And I think this is something that most of us know by now, right? Like, it's not just that young people are spending too much money on matcha lattes, it's their basic necessities that are becoming too expensive, and so they're succumbing to debt as a last resort. Because what else do you do when you already don't have a lot of disposable income and an unexpected expense comes up? Well, you don't have much other choice than putting it on credit.
I just need somebody else to tell me that they're living paycheck to paycheck and putting themselves into credit card debt out of necessity, not because of fun. I am 28 years old. I work a decent paying job. I love my job. I make good income. We have no kids, me and my fiance, and we're still barely scraping by. Our bills are paid, but we can't save any money. We can't go on vacation. I mean, we do little things here and there, but realistically, we don't really do anything. And we still live paycheck to paycheck, okay?
A recent study found that 1 in 4 Gen Z respondents would max out their credit cards to bail themselves out of a tough financial situation. Also, it is important to clarify that yes, there is a group of Gen Zers that are just bad with money and accrue debt like they're investing in their real-life Animal Crossing island, except they don't have the luxury of paying it back with bells to a cutesy pixelated raccoon dog. But this isn't unique to one generation. I think people forget that every generation has a subgroup of people who don't give an F and will never get it together. The difference here is that Gen Z was dealt a sabotaged hand from the start, leaving them just trying to stay above water. Budgeting won't help. The issue isn't that Gen Z is reckless or bad with money. The issue is that they're operating in an economy fundamentally different from previous generations. As you can expect, one of the byproducts of this is that a lot of Gen Z has just given up, because they don't have any hope that things will get better. The veil of the optimistic future sold to them in childhood has been lifted, and they're left empty-handed and in a constant state of money dysphoria. What that means is that many of them jump on short-lived financial trends using coping mechanisms like little treat culture and just overall feeling chronically behind.
You want a crashing out video about cost of living? Here's a crashing out video. So last month, our water bill was pretty high, $217 for the month. It was the highest I've ever had. I'm like, okay, let me look into this. Our usage was a little high, so I talked to my girlfriend. I say, let's try to conserve water. We did everything right. For the entire month, we turned off the sink while we were doing our dishes. We took short showers. I even used a timer during my showers. We consolidated loads of laundry. We did everything we could to save water. And you know what? We did a damn good job. We saved 500 gallons, which is awesome. You know, that is a great improvement. You want to guess how much my water bill was for this month? $215. We used 500 gallons less, and I saved $2 whole. Are you actually for real right now?
So we've laid out that the situation is less than ideal, but what hope does Gen Z have to get out of their money messes? Well, in regards to battling the cost of living crisis, the trends are looking better, I will say with an asterisk. They're not perfect, but better is better than nothing. So as we've seen over the past few years, the rate of inflation is going down, which as a reminder doesn't make things cheaper, but gives us a bit of breathing room. And along with that, wages are slowly going up. ECA's latest salary trends survey reveals an increase in salaries of 1.7% above inflation for 2025, continuing the return to positive growth seen last year. So that was in Canada, but in America, from December 2024 to December 2025, wages grew 1.1 percentage points faster than inflation. Nominal wages, the literal dollars earned regardless of cost of living, increased by 3.8%, while inflation stood at 2.7%. Now, I am no economist, and I have never gone through a recession in my adult life before, but I think those numbers are promising, as long as we stay on that trajectory. Again, it's not perfect and our basic necessities are still far too expensive, but it's something to hold on to. I also do want to note that this subject of income is a really tricky one to navigate because there's such a drastic difference in stages of life between younger and older Gen Z. On the younger end, the average salary for people ages 16 to 24 is just $40,000 per year, which I don't think you can even live on your own with that salary in today's day and age. But on the other end, the average salary for someone between the ages of 25 and 34 is $60,000 per year. And if you've partnered up with someone who also makes that income, then you probably feel the pressure of the economy, but you're doing fine. Basically, it's impossible to cover this in a way that includes everyone's situation, but this is what we're dealing with. Moving on, the other thing that is more promising for Gen Z is that a lot of them aren't just ignoring their debt, they're actually doing something about it. To cope, Gen Z workers are adopting aggressive cost-cutting strategies. Many rely on home-cooked meals, discount retailers, and free entertainment, while others take more extreme measures. Respondents reported cutting their own hair, tightly controlling household energy use, taking short or cold showers, and air drying clothes to reduce expenses.
This month, my husband and I are doing No Spend November, which means for the whole month of November, we are spending money only on essentials. So groceries, gas, replacing household items like toilet paper, paper towels if we really need it. But The rules are no eating out, no shopping, no online purchases. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just spending money only on things we need day to day.
On top of cutting expenses where they can, Gen Z is the king of side hustles. With all the opportunities in an online world, a lot of them have found ways to make supplemental income to either pay for their expenses or pay off their debt completely. There's even a whole trend online of people sharing their debt journeys with the help of the TikTok partnership program.
Using TikTok to pay off my student loan debt. Welcome to day one. Next 361 days, I'm going to be posting on TikTok every single day. Everything that I earn from the video that I post is going straight towards student loans.
And the impact of this goes beyond just the person sharing it, as it helps normalize debt and motivates others to do the same. So that gives me some hope, at least, that Gen Z has a path out of this, even if it's not as carefree and prolific as previous generations had it in their 20s. So if you're just as chronically online as I am, you're probably saying to me right now, there's not going to be wage growth, you stupid. There isn't even going to be a job. And if you're not chronically online, you're probably like, what the frick was that? But yes, the job market is also trash right now, and people are less worried about wages than just holding a job in the first place.
If you have gotten a job in this job market, can you please tell me what you did in the comments? Because I'm going insane. I just went through 2 months, 6 rounds of interviews with a company, made it to the very end. I was so sure I was going to get it, and I just got rejected. Nothing else has panned out. I've interviewed with the company I used to work at, other companies, all types of roles. I have an engineering degree. I was working at a really good company before this, and now I'm hitting 9 months of unemployment, and I'm going insane.
The entry-level hiring crisis is getting worse in 2026. More than half of 183 employers surveyed rated the 2026 job market as poor or fair, and they projected only a 1.6% increase in hiring for the class of 2026. At a Yale School of Management gathering, the news was even more dismal. 66% of executives surveyed plan to cut jobs or freeze hiring this year, with only 1/3 expected to hire at all.
Quite a few times.
50 times?
More.
100 times?
More.
200 times?
More.
So it's not looking good out there. Now, the main suspect of this job crisis has been AI. We've all seen the headlines how AI is taking all the entry-level jobs. As said by Anish Raman, artificial intelligence is increasingly threatening jobs that historically served as stepping stones for younger workers.
40%.
Am I not the one
That's impressive. What coding languages are you most comfortable with?
I'm proficient in Python, JavaScript.
Oh, come on.
How fun. And then there's also the threat that all the rest of our jobs are going to be replaced by 2030. Elon Musk has repeatedly said he believes AI and robotics will eliminate the need for people to work at all in the near future. But we don't trust anything he says, so what is going on here?
Franz, could you try to break this glass, please? Oh my God.
Well, first of all, the impact of AI on the current job market is potentially inflated, to the point that many are saying AI is just a scapegoat for the hiring freezes. This survey reveals that the junior hiring crash started in 2022, before many CEOs knew what prompt engineering was. Now, to be clear, AI is definitely taking a lot of jobs, but as far as I'm seeing, it isn't the main player in the job crisis. Because while AI is good at doing a lot of things, it's also not advanced enough to do most jobs yet. The recent McKinsey report on the state of AI in 2025 claims that the technology is still very much in the early stages of adoption, and nearly 2/3 of respondents say their organizations have not yet begun scaling AI across the enterprise. So it's mostly just that the economy is not doing well, and therefore companies are cutting hiring between the tariffs disrupting their businesses, sales being down, and scaling back after hiring too many people during the post-pandemic boom. So that in and of itself gives me hope that when the economy rebounds, that we'll have relief in the job market. Now, as for AI taking all our jobs in the future, there still is a very high likelihood that will happen, but not at the rate the tech giants like to tell us. You know, it was just last year they were telling us AGI by 2030, yet now the narrative is that up to 50% of jobs could be fully automated by 2045. The reason this timeline was pushed back, again, I want to specify that I am not a computer computer scientist, so I'm just talking about this to the best of my ability. But what I've learned is that progressing AI isn't a linear process where each upgrade gets us one step closer to a complete AI takeover. Rather, it takes a lot of breakthroughs and hurdles to overcome to get from an LLM to proper AGI. So while AI probably will be taking our jobs eventually, it seems to be more of a slow burn sort of situation at this point. I'm still in the camp of I'll believe it when I see it, because I've heard too many tech CEOs crying wolf over their revolutionary product that hasn't even been invented yet.
We've created these little tiny tubes which are designed to replace the big traditional tubes and instead allow for all the testing to be done from a tiny drop from a finger.
So yes, I may eat my words in the future on this one, but as of right now, they have given us no proof that this is our destiny. But that doesn't help the jobless Gen Z today, as they're still stuck facing a garbage job market. So what are they doing about it? Well, for one, a lot of them are turning to blue-collar work, as these jobs haven't been as affected. 3 in 5 Gen Z workers plan to embrace blue-collar work in 2026, including half of those with college degrees or higher. As well, like previously stated, many are taking on gig work because what else do you do when no one is hiring? Is it ideal? Absolutely not. People should have the ability to pay for their basic needs with a singular income, but the reality of the situation is that even if you have a full-time job, many rely on side gigs to pay their bills. But whether we want to take on gig work or not, there is an unsettling trend of more and more jobs turning into gig work.
So we all know that I'm a big fan of remote work and the gig economy, but it seems that companies are now taking advantage of both of those. In a survey done here, they found that a lot of organizations, as they realized they could utilize a remote workforce, found that they didn't need to hire full-time individuals, they could just hire different contractors, which of course on their end is much cheaper.
Which is very concerning for Gen Z's future. Data from Total Jobs Hiring Trends Index shows that 17% of businesses are looking to increase the number of temporary staff and contractors they hire. As well, in the US, the most common form of employment misclassification is when companies wrongfully classify a full-time employee as an independent contractor, when those workers should have employment status and receive the benefits of being an employee. The biggest players in this are companies like Uber and Amazon, who try and sell their workers on the benefits of gig work, like being your own boss and setting your own hours. But if you don't know why this is a bad thing, let me tell you, it's actually in the company's interest to not hire permanent drivers because they save so much money and avoid taking responsibility for the workers. See, traditional full-time employees get minimum wage protections, health insurance, unemployment insurance, paid leave, and often retirement contributions. Freelancers, on the other hand, don't get any of that. Now, while there are a lot of benefits of being self-employed, this is kind of a phony version of it because you have limited control over your work. The company sets the pay structure and can deactivate you if you don't follow their rules. So you aren't really working for yourself. My worry is that this trend continues to gain in popularity and the perks we've come to expect from a job could disappear, just like pensions have fallen out of fashion largely. Now, while this is all not great, that doesn't mean that we're without hope, as we're already seeing governments in some countries fighting back against this abuse of workers. Back in 2021, the UK court ruled that Uber drivers are not independent contractors and are entitled to worker benefits. That means drivers are entitled to minimum wage, pensions, and holiday pay, which is a huge win. So while the Gen Z job market predictions are pretty grim, as long as the economy rebounds and we don't get AGI anytime soon, I think we'll be okay. Maybe I'm a bit too optimistic on this one, but you tell me. So let's take a break from finance and talk about relationships. Because what would be a conversation on Gen Z without including the loneliness epidemic?
This is my impression of what it's like to make friends as an adult.
You going home for the holidays?
Yeah, I'm going home in a few
That'd be
days. Yeah,
Hey.
actually.
You guys friends with each other?
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me get in on that.
What?
As we know, Gen Z is for the most part very lonely. We see from this survey that 73% of Gen Z report feeling alone sometimes or always. Many factors come into play here, like the lack of third places, phone addiction, and the cost of living crisis, all challenges that are hard to overcome, making it seem that unless something drastic happens, Gen Z is just doomed to be lonely forever. As this Gen Zer shares, I found myself a bit stuck when it came to finding spaces that connect other people my age, and even more so with similar interests. I work from home and study online, so I don't really have a natural second or third place that historically I may have met people through. It really feels like Gen Z got the brunt of a perfect loneliness storm, disrupted human connection from the pandemic. At the same time, our screens reached peak optimization for addiction, all the while trying to navigate their transition into adulthood.
Welcome to today's society. Look at all these people on their phones. They don't even know what nobody notices. All your dreams. Your heart.
But as time goes on, the digital world infiltrates our lives more and more and replaces real-life experiences with online ones. Our experiences of pleasure, hands-on skills, self-reliance, relationships, and connection to nature are all threatened by mediating technology. Daily intimacy with the physical world recedes little by little, while our attachment to digital worlds grows. More and more, we relate our world through information about it rather than direct experience with it. This substitution of information for experience explains why we like to eat convenient meals prepared by someone else while watching TV chefs create elaborate meals from scratch. But as it turns out, Gen Z is getting sick of this, and we're seeing signs of the tides turning. Because no matter how much tech companies try and create artificial connections, like the Like a Hug wearable social media vest, which squeezes the person wearing the vest when someone likes their photo mimicking a hug, nothing will replace real relationships.
I know that there is something seriously wrong with the world that we live in because we host a really big Christmas party every year. This is our 4th annual year, and we do not get invited to another Christmas party. And it's not because we're just not invited, it's because they're not happening. Nobody is having these really big open invite Christmas, Thanksgiving, Boxing Day, New Year's, whatever it is. People are not having house parties. We are single-handedly keeping the house party, Christmas party scene alive.
And so these fleeting online interactions are leading young people to a yearning for genuine community, along with the desire to feel like a part of tangible experiences. In a survey, more than 3/4 of Gen Zers said that the older they grow, the more they realize the importance of spending time in the real world as opposed to the online world.
Hot take, why don't we bring back inconveniencing yourself to show up for people? You don't want to go out, but it's your friend's birthday? Show up.
And this rebellion has evolved into a return to analog. We're seeing a huge increase in young people put down the phone and opt for offline alternatives so they can feel like they have agency over their lives again. In this survey of 2,000 Americans, 50% said that they've made a point to disconnect digitally and spend less time on screens for their well-being. And young Americans are trailblazing this trend, with more Gen Z and millennials getting offline than Gen X and baby boomers. When asked why they're choosing to go offline, people say they want increased productivity, to be more present in the lives of their loved ones, and simply want to be aware of what's happening around them. There's also a lot of different ways to approach this. Some opt for the brick, which locks you out from certain apps. As well, there was the rise of the Focus app last year, which topped the Apple App Store charts. And then there's a lot of people just opting for simpler technology. For example, digital cameras and iPods are seeing an unexpected resurgence because they allow the convenience without the distractions that come with a smartphone. This really goes to show that Gen Z wants real connections and real experiences. They've just been so limited by their environment that they often don't know how to go about fixing it. And because we're living in a world that's prone to isolating people, it's getting increasingly more difficult to make those connections organically. But I do come to you with good news because I have found the perfect solution that brings people looking for friendship to you, the friendship app Timeleft. Now, this isn't just the sponsor of this video, but something I think is a real way to push back against the loneliness epidemic. From firsthand experience of going on Timeleft's women's dinner, it's so cool to see people who want to be a part of a community actually finding their community. So what it is an app where you get matched with 5 other people anonymously, women or mixed, using their personal algorithm and go on a curated event together, like dinner, drinks, coffee, or a run. What I love about it is that there's no bios, there's no swiping, you just sign up and show up. The algorithm matches you with like-minded people based on your interests and personality, and then they book the venue that fits your vibe, zone, and budget. All you need to do is come open and curious and ready to listen beyond small talk. I think the reason this works so well is since it's a group gathering, it takes away the intensity of a one-on-one meetup. 6 people means you're never alone in silence, and the group carries the conversation. So if you're more quiet or shy, there are others to lead the conversation, and if you're naturally talkative, there are listeners who appreciate it. Now, that's not to say that there won't be awkward silences or a slow start, because we are in fact all human, and that's just the nature of meeting new people, but the fact that everyone chose to be there with the same intention means there's an energy of we're all in this together, and it gets easier as the night goes on. As for my dinner last week, I definitely had that exact experience. We started with surface level questions and some moments of silence, but as the night went on, we got deep into really interesting conversation about our upbringings and our future goals, and before we knew it, we'd been there for hours. Was it perfect? No, but I don't think it's supposed to be. Not every person you meet will become your best friend, but actually showing up and being open and putting yourself in a room with people who are also trying, I think that really matters. I personally can't stop recommending it because it's such a cool way to connect with people that I would have never gotten the opportunity to meet otherwise. And on top of that, you can try it for free for a month if you sign up with my code Ashley before the end of February. After that, you can still get 25% off your first month with code Ashley25. So check it out and let me know what you think about it. The link for Timeleft is in the description below. Okay, now let's get into everyone's least favorite subject, housing. As we're all well aware, there is a housing crisis, and Gen Z's chance of buying into the market is pretty much non-existent, depending where you live.
The bank was like, we have really good interest rates right now for houses. And
So should we buy a house?
In this economy?
Yeah. Let's go 50-50.
We can't afford 50-50 on a house.
All right, 60-40 or 80-20, you 80-20.
We're gonna rent forever.
I know that's true. Isn't that f***ed up that we can't even, like, there's no potential for us to buy a home ever?
Yeah. Maybe I'll go back to live with my parents.
Me too, dude.
Median price for a starter home rose to $287,000 in 2024, up by about 44% from 2020. To qualify for a mortgage on a starter home last year, a person needed to be earning over $100,000 a year. That's double what it was in 2020. And for those of us living in very expensive areas, please don't get your panties in a knot over how cheap a $300,000 house sounds. I will remind you that this is the average price in America, and we should be focusing more on the fact that there was a 44% increase. But this has resulted in the age of first-time buyers climbing to an all-time high of 40 years old, which is pretty depressing. And as of right now, there's no signs that the housing market will drop to affordable prices ever again, because despite the fact that markets have cooled and in many areas prices are on the decline, a price drop big enough to make housing affordable for the middle class likely won't happen, because it would wipe out the retirement savings of Gen X and boomers relying on that home equity. And so it's looking ever more likely that Gen Z will be the first generation of primarily renters. But I want to talk about what we do with this situation and what the implications are on Gen Z's financial future. Because homeownership is, unfortunately, more than just somewhere to live. For most people, it's their single largest investment and the foundation of their financial security, hence it largely being used as a retirement fund. But despite the hype, real estate isn't your only option for financial security, and sometimes actually backfires into a financial nightmare. You don't have to look very far online to see stories about people regretting homeownership because they bought beyond their means as they were sold the promise that real estate was a golden ticket to riches.
I think this might actually be kind of a hot take, but buying a house was
one of the worst things I've ever done. Obviously, everyone wants different things. Every market is different. Everyone's personal financial situation is different. Blah, blah, blah. We bought about 2 years ago. When we signed the contract to buy the house, it was still being built. By the time we closed, interest rates had gone up by almost a full percentage point. And we also locked in when house prices were the highest. So basically we bought it the worst time possible in, the past few years. Within 2 months of living in that house, I realized that I did not want to live there. We decided that we would try to sell our house because we were we're just not happy here. This wasn't the best decision for us. Let's just go. And we listed it a year and a half, tried to list it at a price where we would at least break even, and obviously we haven't sold yet.
The truth is that homes are expensive, and if you don't have the financial capacity to adapt to random costs and fees that come along the way, then it's probably not the right time for you. But say you can afford a house and you do have a down payment ready. Do you need to buy a house for your long-term financial success? Well, it depends on the situation. See, we've been sold this idea that with renting, you're just throwing your money away, but it's never followed up with how much money you throw away each month as a homeowner. Because while some of your mortgage payment goes to the principal, which acts like a forced savings account, you have to take into account all the other expenses you're paying in the process, like the interest on the mortgage, which for the first few years makes up the majority of each monthly payment. And that's just the beginning. There's also property tax, house insurance, repairs, and in some cases strata/HOA fees. So what this means is that as a renter, you can take that freed up cash that you aren't spending on housing costs and put it to work.
Should you rent or should you buy? The debate continues on social media, and I want to give you my 2 cents. If you buy a house for $400,000 today and it ends up growing to $1.2 million 30 years from now, you didn't technically make $800,000 because most people take out a 30-year loan and most people are going to pay a lot of interest on that. Plus your property taxes, homeowners insurance, maintenance, potential HOA. When you add all that together, roof, windows, flooring, remodeling, all of that stuff, it's probably going to be about 1.2. So at best, you break even, unless you were making massive principal payments along the way, then you might make a couple $100,000. But at the end of the day, it's a forced savings account. Then why do people get on the internet and say, no, renting's the way to go? Well, if you're a disciplined investor, and instead of putting $80,000 down, for example, on a house, you put that directly into the stock market. Instead of making a $3,000 a month monthly payment every month on your mortgage, property taxes, potential HOA, maintenance, you rent for, let's say, $1,500. You take the $1,500 difference every single month and put that into the stock market. If you weigh that over 30 years, you will probably have $2 to $3 million in the stock market compared to your house, which would be about 1.2.
Now, there are so many variables to this, like how much your rent is, how much your rent goes up over time, the price of the house, which affects the growth, as well as how much of a down payment you have. So it's not a surefire solution for everyone, but I wanted to include it to show that homeownership isn't the end-all be-all of finance. Now, I want to acknowledge that most people don't buy a house primarily for the investment. They do it for personal reasons like security and freedom, and to that, I have no answer, unfortunately. My hope is that the government will follow through with their promises of affordable housing for young adults, but who knows if that's going to happen. Now this takes us right into retirement, which is something I think about a lot. Like, how the flip are any of us going to retire given these harsh conditions?
This is my third time trying to retire, with minimum wage being $25 now. Yay. But my rent being 1 kidney, or equivalent money's worth. Never really knew this day would come, so excited to be here. My parents had 2 careers in their working life. I have had 46, including Uber for pets, family vlogger, social media manager, family vlogger, lawyer for the messy lawsuits, receptionist, assistant to the AI receptionist, part-time repair person of the AI receptionist. And finally this, my ideal position, a nondescript hybrid email job with enough time to see my friend.
You don't even have the most important asset, a home, that every other generation is relying on for their own retirement. What is one to do? Because while investing your money young can help offset this, you're still stuck with paying rent compared to having a paid off home to live in as a retiree. But despite this, as I learned, a apparently Gen Z is still more prepared for retirement than any other generation. I know, I didn't believe it either when I read it. As we see here, research published at the end of last year found that Gen Z, those born between 1997 and 2012, are outpacing earlier generations in contributing to retirement, having 3 times more assets in their 401k retirement savings accounts than Gen X households had at the same age in 1989, adjusted for inflation. Now, to be clear, this isn't because Gen Z is doing astronomically better than previous generations, but because no one else saved for retirement, so the bar is so low. As it turns out, even now, half of Gen X and boomers aren't ready for retirement, even though it's basically knocking at their door. But how is this the case when they bought their houses for 2 raspberries and a pat on the back? Well, as it turns out, even if you're a boomer with $1 million home, that alone is not enough to retire. Because if they sold their home and downsized to, say, a $300,000 condo, that only leaves $600,000 for retirement, which just isn't enough. But to get back to Gen Z, what makes them different and more prepared? Well, a big part of Gen Z's retirement readiness comes from recent changes that introduced auto deposit features in employer retirement plans, which allows them to slowly grow their savings. Now, I do need to specify that this is specific to America. I usually talk about these things interchangeably with Canada because we have a lot of the same trends and cultural problems, but this is not one of those scenarios. So this was news to me. If you're an American, you probably already know about this, but as of December 2024, employers that establish a 401k are required to automatically enroll employees in the plan. And while the employee does have the choice to opt out of making contributions, enough people are opting in for the auto deposits and locking that money away before they even see it. And in doing so, dominating older generations in the retirement readiness race. The other thing Gen Z has going for them is just so much access to financial education and investment opportunities. Back in the day, learning about money meant either tracking down a financial advisor who may or may not have been sketchy, or poring over books, magazines, or formal courses. Today, however, any question you could ever ask about finance has an answer with 1, maybe 2 quick Google searches. As well, we now have apps to do the investing for us, so there's no need to go through traditional financial firms. You can get started on your own. Mind you, you do still have to hop, skip, and jump your way around all the grifter finance bros online selling you their courses and hype coins along the way.
If you guys still have Bitcoin, pause the video and go sell it now.
But it's still more accessible than any generation before. Take this Gen Z Canadian, for example. Tanny didn't grow up hearing about registered retirement savings plans at the dinner table, but that didn't stop her from opening her own account by the time she was 21. With the help of YouTube videos and online articles, she learned about the importance of compound interest and sifted through the jargon of Canada's different registered accounts. Today, she works at a pharmaceutical company in Toronto and contributes 3% of her salary to a defined contribution pension plan. And in turn, her employer contributes 7%. She hopes to be able to contribute more as her salary increases. "I don't want money to control me or make me stressed," she said. "I want to reach financial freedom one day." So all that being said, while it isn't much of a flex to say that Gen Z is more prepared for retirement than the generations that are completely not prepared for retirement, it does still stand for something that Gen Z is actively working toward it. And at the end of the day, at least if no one is able to retire, at least we're all on this sinking ship together. Okay, final thoughts. So with all the horrible things going on around the world right now, I really felt drawn to find some hope and share it with you. Let me know if this left you feeling hopeful or worse than before. I'm actually unsure at this point. I was just looking for any light in this dark, dark tunnel that we're going through. I choose to believe that Gen Z's future doesn't have to be as horrific as we're led to believe, but that's because I don't know how I would cope if nothing got better. So I also just read the book Animal Farm this week, which I heard is a very common high school required reading, but I never read it. And reading it in 2026 felt crazy. Really put a fire under my butt of, oh my God, we need to do something. And for me, that something was giving you anything to hold on to. But that is all I have for you today. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't, if you want more video essays from me. Also check out the merch. All the proceeds go to the Essay Foundation. And I wish you a week of touching grass and writing letters to your elected officials. Bye.
You know, it's really moments like this when it becomes so clear that you exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you. You know, we really didn't just like fall out of a coconut tree.